So I'm Greg Chambers, LeadGen Compass. And what we do is we do a lot of, we work with companies that have purchased lists from Go Leads or US Farm Data, or in this case, in Doctor Database, and then we help them take those lists and then get a few of those people, instead of reaching out to those customers and those prospects, get some of those people to come back and reach out to them. So that's what we do for marketing. And then Bill Mattern.
President, US Farm Data, Go Leads, LeadGen Compass. And I'll be the one making sure Greg clarifies, and I'll ask questions along the way. And because I'm here just like you, kind of learning. Does Facebook work?
Right, especially B2B niche markets.
Right. So let's get into it.
So sorry, I'm gonna move this. So what you can expect today is we'll give you some ideas about Facebook, and specifically about niches and business to business. And basically how to segment that, how to find these people in the vast world that is Facebook advertising. Working with restrictions, sometimes inside of Facebook, they've got this funny thing, right? Where if you are pretending that you know, if you let that person receiving the advertising think that you know too much about them, that's bad. And so we'll talk about that. So if you do, then they say, hey, you have restriction, right? It's restricted.
Facebook says
so. I bumped into this when we were doing that lead generation for the law firms, and they were doing the medical problems.
Yeah,
and then if the ad reflected any of the medical problems, they won't run your ad.
Yeah.
And so how is it that you work inside of there? We'll tell you how we worked around that. We'll give you some do's and don'ts and lessons learned. And then I'm going to, basically, what you came here for was the 5 ideas. And so we'll run through those 5 big ideas. Okay, and I'm reading the text. Okay, and playing the part of the audience, there's Bill, there's Spencer, and there's Sarah. So if you don't have questions, they're instructed to ask questions or give comments along the way.
Perfect.
Are you ready for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what are the 5 things? The first one, I'll call it segment, multi-touch, all networks, all ads with them.
Say that 20 times.
Exactly. The second one we'll talk about is your list, your emails, and what to do with those. We'll talk about restrictions, branding, and HIMs. We'll talk about frequency and Boolean logic.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of throw in Boolean. And some mistakes we've made along the way. The whole webinar, if we tried to go with all the mistakes we've made along the way, would be a long webinar. So why bother? So at the very beginning, let's at least get on the same page with this. So this is the latest from the Pew results come out every year, PEW, and they tell us, who we are as Americans. 90% of Americans are online right now. So that was a big number. Of those, 69% are on Facebook. So not 69% of the 90%, but 69% of Americans are active on Facebook.
All ages.
So they say, all ages, right?
Wow.
So this is kind of all the way around there, right? If we look at the number of people working in the USA, right now that number, and by the way, we did this a couple of years ago, this number is really jumped, right? Strong job market. There's 157 million people working in the USA.
Okay.
Right? So the idea is, the reason why it's why bother is if there's that many people, if we're targeting businesses, people work for businesses, right? They've got to be inside of Facebook somewhere. So we can at least agree on that. But this is what we hear all the time. But I hate Facebook. I don't use it, right? So I'm part of I'm part of the 90% that's online, and I have a profile, but I never want to be on there. I don't think Bill is even
90% of our customer base.
Yeah, basically. I hate it. I don't want to use it. So, but mostly what we consider, right, is you think about it, it's the Facebook feed, right? So you have your feed, right, and it's the pictures of cats, dogs, kids, some lately a lot of little political rants, and then ads are interspersed in there. I don't want to be on there doing that. That includes mobile. I don't want to do that either, or Messenger. So my kids use Messenger. I don't use Messenger. As a matter of fact, I got some really weird, I won't tell any of these stories, but I got some weird Messenger things from people in my past. I'm like, I'm never using Messenger. I'm not even going to log on to this thing. But Facebook also owns Instagram, right? So the ad network, when I consider the ad network of Facebook, we're also looking at Instagram. And even more important than that, it's built for us, it's kind of covered there, but that's the Daily Mail, right? That's a newspaper And inside of there, Facebook has an extensive audience network. So if you're matched inside of Facebook, I know that this person, I know Bill is in Facebook somewhere, and we can attach those things. I can track you over to ESPN, right? As you're looking at basketball scores, and then you see Greg Chambers' ad show up. So that's why we're kind of playing with this from a broad sense. The other broad idea that I just want to get across is suspects, prospects, customers. We talk a lot about segmenting because one of the things that happened at the beginning when we first started advertising online is it's just a lot of broadcasting, right? It's all my customers. Here's my list of 20,000. I'm going to send them all. We send them all the same things, right? Whether they are customers, whether they just did business with us for the first time, whether they have been doing with us for 20 years, or whether they've never used this kind of stuff before, right? So when we talk about segmenting, that's what we're talking about. Is there the more that your marketers, the more that you're asking your marketing people to break people into broad groups, it's easier to work with them, right? So separating, for instance, customers and prospects is a simple one that people can do on the front end. And do those people need the same message, right? It's kind of the big idea. People who know us versus really don't know us. Maybe somebody who's visited the website, I don't know, for one time, and we have no other information from them. I don't know that we can say that they know us, right? But how can we separate those from the ones that do? So people coming to the website, but they actually do know who they are inside of our list. So we'll talk about how to work that inside of the Facebook advertising platform. And then this one's a little harder, but they've used something similar to the services or products that you offer, but versus the people who have no idea, who've never done this before, right? This kind of engagement, like I don't even really know why anybody buys U.S. Farm Daily List, is the no idea person versus somebody who's like, oh, we've been marketing to farmers for years, and when I was in a seed company, we used U.S. Farm Data. That's
similar to our audience today, right? Some have used Facebook, some have not, right? And
right.
I have no idea. Right?
Exactly.
I have no idea why I should be on Facebook or why I should use Facebook. Right?
Just here to look around.
Right.
So one of the things that guides us here and should guide you, the advantage of this is we can differentiate our messages by group, right? So we can use these like customers who have used a similar service but don't know us. Yeah. Well, I guess that wouldn't really be the same group. It would be customers who know us but have no idea that we have a new service, for instance. Yeah. We might tailor that message directly to them. We can borrow the influence of the fact that they've already done business with us and they've been around for a period of time. You could do all that. Some of that you do directly in Facebook, but really a lot of it is done on paper outside of Facebook. And then we talk about this big idea. So what I'm giving you before I jump into my 5 is let's talk about these broad things, right? So if here's how big the Facebook network is. Here's the way that we like to segment before we even jump into Facebook, before we start trying to work through that world. This is one that we use a lot because people ask us about different types of advertising, like AdWords. Okay, right? So search engine marketing versus social media marketing, and we break it down into awareness versus intent. So to use those two broad examples, Facebook to us is best for awareness. We don't know why people are on Facebook. I don't know what it is that they're doing, but they're probably doing something else, right? If they're in Messenger, they're sending a message, but probably not to us. If they're on the Daily Mail, they're looking at news, probably not us. Yeah. So we would approach those differently, right? So awareness, we can look up, for instance, if I have a nursing job that's open in Ohio, and I would really like to find a male CNA, so somebody with a CNA license in Ohio, age 25 to 40, that audience is in Facebook, okay, right? Versus this, right? If I were going to try to find that same person in AdWords, I would look for somebody who's searching for open CNA jobs in Ohio, right? I don't know if they're male. I don't know if they even live in Ohio. There's a lot of things I don't know about them. But one of the things I do know is that they're looking for, right? I can see the intent. Yeah, right. So when it comes to picking between these two, for B2B niche advertising, just so we're on the same page, when you say, does Facebook work? I say, yes, but gosh, as we're starting, if we have to prioritize these 20 things that we can do to generate leads, why don't we go look at intent first? Because it's a little bit easier to separate the wheat from the chaff in from this right side than it is on the left side, right? And just so you know, this is how it looks. So we say we can really get that done. I don't know if that even shows up, but that is what I just described, right? So that is males 25 to 40, CNAs, just the state of Ohio. Yeah, it's amazing. And then what always amazes me is that it populates with not very many people, right? It said like we've got 700.
And look at this in the traditional world of when someone calls in for data, a list.
Right.
One's a list, one's a hand raiser. Right. I mean, how they define it.
And then how do we get them to cross over?
Right.
Yeah. So, but on Facebook, as we know, or on Google, if you're looking for that job, the first thing that pops up is all those job sites. And then you can advertise on there and move yourself up so that you actually rank for them. And so inside there, awareness versus intent, keep that in mind as we're moving through the rest of this. And because what we're after is we're going to try to work the overlap, right? If we know that our people are on the Facebook network somewhere, and we know that businesses are searching for certain things, we can now take intent, we can maybe mark them inside of Facebook, and now we can use the Facebook network to amplify our message to get more things out.
Very good.
Right. So that's what we're after. So this is, in the broad sense, this is what we're going to be talking about from here the way through. And then I have to tell you a great story. So this just popped up in the news this week. So the unicorn.
The actual company?
This is actually a company called the Unicorn. Did you hear about this already?
I don't know. I don't know if it's the same.
Or did you hear about the puppy? Did you hear about Narwhal, the puppy? So he was born with a tail in his head. But he looks like a unicorn. How adorable. We're not talking about Narwhal. We're talking about Unicorn, the company.
Right.
And they just announced that they went down. So this company raised $150,000. Plus they sold 300 and some scooters for $399 or whatever it was. So they raised another 250 grand. And then they just said, oh, you know what? This idea isn't working. So we have to shut down. And they blamed it on Facebook advertising, the price of Facebook advertising.
Well, of course. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, like it's too expensive. And now we're out of money, so we can't do anything else. And so the reason I bring this up is because when we look into the future, since we can't predict the future, what are contingent and preventative actions that we can take?
Okay.
And the first one is we can come up with some metrics before we jump in. Now, to unicorns, to give them a break, they didn't know because it's a brand new market inside there. But we, as businesses, we have some ideas before we jump into Facebook and start buying advertising and doing all these things. We have some idea as to we know what our revenue per customer is, for instance, right? On average, or maybe first year.
Yep.
First year, this is what an average customer does. We know what we pay in commissions.
Correct.
Right? So then we start to, we can figure out close rates.
Correct.
Oftentimes. From there, we can best guess what it is that we should be expecting from Facebook.
Okay.
So when you say, does it work? I say, I don't know. But if we're going to spend any money in here before we spend $1,000, what would we expect normally from $1,000 in the rest of our business? Right. And so we could come up with maybe a cost per acquisition, right? This is a cost per sale. This is a cost per lead, right? Based on our close rate, right? We could do some backwards math on those things.
And quantify it back to, that would be the tough, it's not the tough part, but how much does it influence in other decisions?
Well, and that's just it. Before you get started, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So you're just trying to put some measurements in place. Okay. So maybe, and I'll show you what, the other tool I use is, imagine I have a great customer, Greg Chambers, and I walk in and Bill, it's your perfect customer.
Okay.
And we know that they're going to spend $10,000. Like let's just say it's a bluebird. It's a guaranteed sale. My brother-in-law, I definitely be talking about it. He's ready to buy. I will tell him to buy from you. How much are you going to give me? Whatever number comes out of your mouth, that's a cost per acquisition. So that's maybe a way to think about it, right? All right. As we're working through. The only thing that I would add in there is average sales cycle. We bump into this with our customers every once in a while where, my sales cycle is 18 months. But then what do I expect to happen inside of Facebook? I'd really like to see something happen inside of 30 days.
Right.
Because I know they're in there.
As with all my marketing.
all my marketing should pay off a lot faster
than reality.
than reality. So average those things in, because all we're trying to do is get a best guess before you get started, right? So you can come up with a couple scenarios, which I don't know that from the way that Unicorn put it out, they may have said, worst case scenario, we just run it completely out of money and tell everybody to screw off and disappear.
Yeah, you're being too nice to them. They should know. I mean,
well, they should know, but I'm just saying they probably, a lot of companies don't do, well, when do you stop, right? They say, well, let's plan for it. What if it's an abject failure? What are we going to do? What if it's better than expected? Sometimes we plan for that, right? Like we're going to go get more money, or gosh, now we've got a manufacturing problem. But the big one is, when do you stop? Like, before I get started, when am I going to stop this thing and stop the madness? So those are just some big ideas before we jump into these 5 things. And so right now, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but if you vehemently disagree with any of those, there's a good chance the rest of this is going to be fascinating to you. And if you find that you were like, kind of nodding in agreement as we go along, then some of this will be pretty good. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, good.
Do you have any questions?
Not yet.
All right. First thing, segments are good. We kind of talked about segments already, but how do we do it inside of Facebook? As we're breaking people down into segments, right? So say I had that current customer segment who's active, and they know of some products that I sell, but they don't know of all the services that I provide, okay? When I create that segment, in order for my message to get through, right, we use the rule of 30, which you know intimately, but if I'm going to get one message through, that kind of looks like iMessage. If I'm going to get one message through to this segment, I need to be thinking of, how do I get in front of them 10 times? Oh, but only 1 out of 3 of those messages might get through. So the rule of 30. Facebook helps immensely with this, because if we can match them up inside of Facebook's ad network, we can bump up a bunch of impressions geared towards that particular segment. Okay. So the way to do that, like in this case, is I use this. Sorry, you guys can't tell what I'm doing, but I'm trying to move this thing around. Creating custom audiences. So I take that group of customers, right, and I'm going to upload them into Facebook, and then from there I will get a match. Hello. I'll get a match in here, and then so in this case I use US farm data, and this is a website match. Now I confused myself. So what I did is I picked website. So I'm going to create a custom audience inside of Facebook, and I'm picking the audience, or I'm defining the audience as people who visited a particular page on my website.
Okay.
Right? And then from there, I can go on the very bottom. I can further refine by more, right? So I can really start to segment this thing down. I can say people who visited it multiple times, or maybe who used a particular device.
Okay. Because you have the Facebook pixel on that page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Facebook knows the other stuff, right?
Okay, right.
So they'll know how many times it comes, but we put the pixel on the page.
Okay.
So it's on our website, and then we can build an audience from there. So that's a way to segment, right? So we're trying to tell Facebook that inside of your 69% of the US population, we're just looking for this fraction of a percent that has been to our website multiple times, and then we want to put them in this bucket. And then when we go to show them this ad, what we do is we go to the placement side to further segment. We will only show the ad to them in certain places. Okay? So, back to the Facebook hating. I hate Facebook. Okay. I never want to use it. Well, yeah, but Facebook's network, their advertising network, Google and Facebook's advertising network, I think I don't know. As far as I can tell, they own it all. So they own all the inventory on all the places. Even if your person never goes to Facebook, but they just go to like farm journals, for instance, on the US farm data, what we can do is we can turn off Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger, and just pick the audience network. Okay, right? This will only show where it is that they go. So the old days of always asking, hey, Bill, what magazines do you read online? Now I don't care as much, because I'm figuring Google or Facebook's probably captured you, and now it's going to show where you show. So fun thing, after you run some of these ads, you can go see where this audience likes to frequent.
And where they're more attentive.
Well, it doesn't really tell you how much.
I know, but I wonder if you
but
could.
you can at least like look through and say,
Yeah.
oh gosh, they do go to ESPN a lot.
Yeah, right.
Right, and it shows the ads in there. And then what we can do is we can limit the frequency that we show those. So instead of like every time, I don't know if you've ever been on like I use thesaurus.com every once in a while, and it'll have an ad of something I looked at, but it's in like 7 spots on that page.
Okay.
And then every time I refresh the page, they keep showing up. You can limit the number of things on there. So that's we talk about. We'll get into mistakes, but I'm going to be covering the mistakes as we go along here. This is how you can increase the frequency by segment.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's one way that we can use Facebook to increase B2B leads.
Okay.
It's really by impressions, and we're kind of determining, right? So we could build a page that's a landing page, and then we know that the CNA search, right? So the person looking for the CNA jobs hits this page from Google. We can give it, right? The only way you find your way to this page is because you came from a Google ad. So now I'm going to start to build a little world of just people who are looking for these jobs. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So we can hyper target.
Yes.
You'll hear more about this in the news. So now you'll at least be able to tell people, oh, I know how to do that. So that's number one. Number two is a little trick is, if these are tricks, tips and tricks, I ended up just calling them things, is expand your mailing list. And what do I mean by that? Well, for most of us, we do, we put out thoughts on, say, like a blog or on our website. So there's a study, a news release, something that goes on the website. And then a few of us will take the extra step of then sending that, right? Grab the link, and I'm going to email it to my list.
Right.
Yep. So we're going to amplify that.
Okay.
Is what we're saying. That's what you need to do. And the way to do that is we need to take this, and now inside those audiences that we built, right, or inside anywhere that we've matched,
right,
let's go find them on Facebook, Instagram, the Daily Mail,
okay,
right? Trying to increase the number of exposures to that. We've seen a lot of, actually, we've just been testing this a little bit on LinkedIn. The results are not in, but we're testing the same thing. How do we get the message out? Anecdotally, more eyeballs that see your things, the better it is for you, right? Top of mind.
So integrating my list with Facebook's audience.
Yeah, or just
right,
taking your list. Right now, there's let's say most people's deliverables are it's 20% opens and it's 3% click-throughs or whatever it is.
Right.
By expanding this, we can take that open rate of the number of views and catch them other places. If you're not getting through to them in the inbox, you can now expand that to all places around the web.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah. So then what we're doing is we're actually taking that list and we're going to improve its deliverability, right? So this goes back to a lot of people call us and say, oh, you know what? I want to rent a cold email list. And when I rent that cold email list, I want to just I want to hit them with an offer and see where that goes. I'm going to mail them one time, and I'm going to win the lottery, right? I'm going to get a new customer out of this.
I promise you, Bill. I'm not going to evaluate you based on this one email.
Right? I would never do that.
I'm being sarcastic.
But this is a way to amplify that. And actually, we can actually kind of reverse engineer it too, right? You can take a list that's a targeted list, even if it's cold to you, and you can start to warm it up before you email it so that maybe they're a little more receptive when it hits your inbox and they don't automatically click you to spam on those things. So by expanding the mailing list, right now, if not everybody, people have been calling the inbox dead for a long time, it's still super effective.
Right.
But now we've got all these other tools to where we can basically expand the inbox. Maybe that's what I should have said, expand the inbox on there. So that's number 2. Number 3, first rule of Facebook Club. Did you ever see this movie?
Don't talk about it. Or
Yeah, there is no Facebook
There
Club.
is
right?
no Facebook.
the first rule of Facebook Club is your ads aren't supposed to tell users you're talking to them, right? So it's oh, we've got all this hyper targeting, we can do all these amazing things, but if they know, if the ad shows that you know something about them, that's bad. So right now, what is happening? So what we have to default to is, even though we know these specific things, right? We can say that this audience, this is what this segment, all the things that kind of are shared in this segment. Right. I'll show you in I think on the next one, where you can start to combine these lists together. So you end up with a pretty targeted list. You know, people have visited this site of mine and they've done these things and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, I'm pretty targeted. I wish I could just send them that message. For some of us, we're working in sensitive areas and you can't, right? This is the what we do when the Roundup, right? So the Roundup cancer lawsuits, and so helping lawyers generate some of those leads. You can't come out and say, "Hey, Hodgkin, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma guy, you know, call me."
Any type of
attorney.
ailment.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
all the elements are off the table.
Right.
There's a lot of other things like alcohol and firearms.
Yeah.
So brands have gotten very clever about how to get around this, because what you have to default to is just, I need to just raise the awareness of me and catch you somewhere else in the list. And I don't know if you've bumped into these hymns. Have you seen these ads? They're everywhere. They're crazy. So what do you think hymns sells?
I don't even want to guess.
You're going bald, right? It's hair. It's hair regrowth. It's erectile dysfunction. They've got these cactus ads that are. I was going to put it up because it made me laugh, but it's they've defaulted to, they're not telling you that you're bald, right? But if you are bald and you see an egg with hair on it, the idea is that you're going to get curious. So this is your next. This is a real unicorn. Going to be a real unicorn, right? They're generating that much business from this. But that's really the idea that we have behind it, is that you have to default to branding on these networks and just raising the level of awareness of who you are. And so hopefully you have a clever name, and unlike some of these law firms that we look at, there's 32 people in the law firm. Doesn't exactly fit into a little tiny ad. So we can go from there. So that's restrictions. I know that there was a few people who had questions on restrictions. I hope that helps to answer it. There is no way to, like, I still got to say, the hair, I don't even know what the hair growth drugs are. But I can't come out and say this directly to them, but I know that's what it is in my ads.
So before it even runs, Facebook will.
Facebook rejects it.
They
or it may show that, oh no, it looks good, and then the robot picks it up, or the live reviewers flag you for these things. Right. Oftentimes it's, you have too much text in the ad, you have this, you have that, but sometimes it's a restricted. We think this is restricted. You can't do this. So brand names show up in there sometimes. We have, again, with I'm kind of defaulting to lawyers right now, but the drugs, like it's Roundup. And so, oh, well, you can't advertise on trademark Roundup. Well, how do we get around it? We've got to just go up and start to be, maybe we have to talk about lawsuits in general, and keep their face in front of them over time. And so that's what we use the Facebook network for. All right. Number 4 is set limits. So I guess this is where I'm going to talk about Boolean logic. But when we start getting used to the idea of audiences, we can get really clever with how we work somebody through a sales cycle, right? So if you're new to me and you visit my site, think of like a travel site. So this isn't B2B necessarily, but you're going to take me from, I know nothing about you, to I know a little bit more about you. Or maybe it's like on one of our businesses, it's the close rate happens really fast. So people are either going to buy or they're not. And so maybe the ad inside the first 30 days, right? So if I'm building this audience here, custom audience, they came to the website and they're in there for 30 days. Okay. Right? Okay. That's what this list is everybody who's under 30 days. So as soon as you go over 30 days, if you haven't been back to the website, you're out. Gotcha. Right? What we can do is we could start to build, we can say, well, if somebody's not there in 30 days, my message changes. So the first 30 days, it may be buy now, here's a coupon, maybe something like that. But then after that, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bother you because you must not be ready, but I'm going to catch you for the next time.
And it's more branding now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could say, Greg visits my website. I'm going to stick him in a 90-day group. Okay. So, right, I want to be able to be in touch with Greg over 90 days. And that's me. That's that group up there. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to build another one of these audiences, and it's the visits. It's a 60-day group. So the cookie expires after 60 days.
All right.
Right. And then I can build a third group, which is my 30-day group. So the idea in there is, if I use this function inside of creating a new audience that I'm advertising to, you can include this and exclude that. So if I just wanted to target my 60-day people, include my 60-day people, Greg visits 60 days, and erase the 90 and 30. So I should be able to catch Greg from day 61 to 89.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
And maybe I start to change the message, and then in the 90-day group, I change that again. So that's a way that you can go through and you can really start, again, not only can you segment, but you can change the messaging inside this. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful, but it should open up, like, this is the micro-targeting piece of Facebook. It's alternately the most exciting thing about it, but it just takes work.
It is a lot of work. And no, it is important, just because it's no different than meeting somebody or something. They're interested. You think they might be interested. You think a close might be soon. If it doesn't happen, the last thing you want to be doing to that person is, I'm just great. Remember when we talked about 20%? Right. Pretty soon you're just going to hurt your name,
right,
if you continue to offer the same message. But okay, as opposed to having that group at 91 or 61 days or saying, okay, let's slow down a bit. Right. Just
exactly. Maybe here's a booklet. Here's some new information, and then it's don't forget us on the way out the door. Now, of course, the trap inside this little segment is that you keep coming back, and then you keep getting stuck in the 30-day. Right. So this is where I just bought something off Amazon, and then I just keep getting the same ad over and over again, because maybe I looked at it at one device and then went to another device.
Amazon's a whole different beast. Right?
It's a whole different beast. But at the same time, a lot of what they're doing is what this is, right? And so one thing you do need to at least consider or think through is what happens to the people if they do get stuck in the loop. How do I get them out of it? And just you create another group, right? There was that frequency. Remember, we looked at that inside the first one. There was a little button for you can add extra criteria for somebody who's visited the site multiple times.
Right.
Start adding those things in, so you can take them out. For e-commerce, we used to do it with purchases, right? So,
that's what I was going.
So as soon as you got to the thank you page, you went into a special list, and that list bumped against all other lists, just to stop the advertising for a while. Okay. All right. So there's your Boolean logic.
Nice.
I picked it in there because that's basically an if this then that.
Totally.
Not this.
Plus, we just love saying the word Boolean.
And or not. All right. Mistakes. I could spend a ton of time on this, but what I'm going to do is just kind of roll through some of the big ones. First one is not changing ads frequently. The way that people use these networks is they tend to be pretty active on there, so they're going to see your ad a lot. We see most ads die their effectiveness almost immediately. So
24 hours, 48 hours?
It's like 24 hours.
Yeah.
So you got to have a lot of ads ready. Or maybe you make an audience group that's just short, right? Yeah. So instead of making it 30 days, maybe it's only 7 days to work on inside there. So again, takes a lot of time, but at the same time,
important.
Yeah, it impacts effectiveness. Multi-touch attribution. So you touched on this during what else is it doing to the rest of the business?
Right.
Oftentimes we get so focused on a channel, like what is happening inside of Facebook, that we forget to look at everything else. I've got this long story about where we used to do for a little e-commerce business, as we did, it was mostly Google ads where we were attributing everything to, but then every time we turned Facebook on, we got a little bump in business. Turn Facebook off, the bump went down. We could never attach checkout to Facebook.
Right.
But somewhere in that network, something was happening that was helping us. After a while, you don't question.
There's a belief. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to make the jump of
The holy grail is we want to be able to attribute
Quantify
everything to
everything,
everything. In the end, you got to look at it a little more broadly. Forgetting about customers. So a lot of times thinking of the easiest place to find new business is selling more of your existing products and services to your existing customers. It's so easy to forget about that because we get excited about the brand new product and then even the brand new audience. And traditionally, that's the longest burn, takes the longest time to switch out and go after that. So that's a big mistake. We just got burned on this one not that long ago because it impacts effectiveness, and especially when it's the customers who come back and buy. They get caught in the new advertising and come back and buy anyways.
totally.
You got to give, again, it's that multi-touch to get going. Not promoting our own content. We make all this content. We stick it out there. December, it's good. We promote it January, February, March. December of next year, most content is still pretty good, right? If you look at like Men's Health and look at April of 2019, 18, 17, 16, like 6 out of 12 of the feature articles are the exact same. It's what goes on before springtime, right? It's like got to get a flat belly for my swimsuit or something. Content can be reused if you're not promoting it, if you're not pushing it out there. That's something we get burned on all the time because we forget. The limiting the ad networks. So sometimes we broadcast everything to everybody right away, and it's not really for every channel. Right? Instagram needs great imagery. If you don't have great imagery, don't stick it on Instagram. Do something different. So limit the ad networks. On the flip side, after you get something that starts working, if you're not expanding the ad networks, that's also a problem.
Okay.
On these things. So these are just some mistakes that we've made and continue to make, but you work your way through them, right?
Totally.
That's we don't have unlimited budget, and that's usually where that comes from. So this is the Big Five review. So if you've stuck with us this long, thank you very much. Make sure you're segmenting and building all your ads with limits, right? So thinking about your audience, bringing them together is probably the key to getting any sort of lift from your lead generation efforts inside of Facebook. Using your list, your emails. I don't remember if it's stuck in there. This version doesn't have it. There is a place to touch on the frequency inside your list, or it's the match logic. That's what I was going to show. I was going to show the match logic on this. Maybe I did it going forward. Now, when you go to the match logic, so the question was internally, right? Is there anything besides email? So email is the very best match rate that's on there, but they have expanded, and so now you can put in more fields. I think it still requires email. I didn't get that far into looking at it, but I was surprised that it was asking for more information, which means it would probably maybe increase the match rate. If maybe it's an email that they're not sure about.
Or Facebook wants the data.
And Facebook wants the data. Well, they certainly want the customer lifetime value because they're like, oh, put in customer lifetime value. Just tell us. Yeah. Right? Like Jeff Bezos says, right? Your margin is my next market. Restrictions. Think of HIMS, right? When it comes to branding, I think they're obviously killing it, doing very well. It's very clever, but we can borrow from them, right? And it's probably this new digital native group that's coming up that thinks in this way. They know they can't come right out and say anything, right? So how do you hint at it and get the same impact? That's some good stuff. Use Boolean logic is a great way to expand, give yourself a few more ad groups to run, but it also creates a lot more work. And then there's a bunch of mistakes we went through. So what do you do with all this information? Good question. I would start with just, instead of trying to do all of it, if you start thinking about like all the segments you can segment your business on, pick one. Like, keep it that simple. Pick one and play with it for a while. So I'm doing a newsletter test with the group just to see if we can get more newsletter signups by expanding this group. I've been messing with it for 30 days. I'll mess with it probably for another 90 days before we get anywhere in it. But it's just testing and trying to find, like, how do you get this group to sign up for newsletters, if at all?
Yeah.
Right? Like this month, my budget went just like that. And so we're done until next month, right? That gets back to the planning on the front end. I'm not going to just keep throwing good money after bad just because the audience is there. I got to wait until the next test comes up. So pick a group to target. Set your cost per acquisition, cost per lead, cost per click guesstimates, right? They're just guesstimates so that you can at least do this with, I'm not going to exceed this budget unless I'm going to shut it off if. And the shut it off is the one that seems to be the challenge for most of us to, like, we just don't give up on anything, right? And maybe it's just America. Don't give up. You just keep going. How about
it's like our investment. We never sell.
Right.
It just keeps going down.
It's going to turn around.
Totally.
But have that set up and then and stick to it on the front end, and then start testing. Start testing these little groups. Start testing the different networks and see if you can move the needle on any of them, because it's a giant beast. And right now, the networks are doing a really good job trying to help us. Trying to help us figure out what it is that how to use their networks, because they've kind of run ahead of us as far as the sophistication of the things you're allowed to do, but we're not there.
It's okay to fail.
It's okay to learn this. Yeah,
totally. You walk away with at least marketing intelligence of some sort. Okay, I know that didn't work. Doesn't mean, we get this a lot working with customers, especially, that if we do quote unquote test something and it doesn't work, they not only don't want to sometimes review and what didn't work, but sometimes it's even their impression of marketing as a whole. Right?
Marketing doesn't work,
and it's okay, as you had that one screen that we made a lot of mistakes, and it is. It's just, but we get better and better and better, and we should. Yeah.
That's it. So that's really the whole thing. So I don't know, if you need help, send us a note. info@leadgencompass.com probably gets to us, the website, anywhere along there, any of these places.
Very good.
Reach out. And if you have any questions, if there's anything we haven't covered, this is literally your last chance to ask. I say that
Unless
because
you want to email.
It's the final slide. We're down there. Right. No, you can always contact us, but we're going to have to go. So we did it in less than 45 minutes.
Perfect.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. Any last questions?
Did we answer them all?
We answered all the ones that were up there. Last one I have is.
We both have horrible eyesight.
I know. Can you see me with my progressives? I tried to look up. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.